Hey everyone, so Sandeep from Price Action Labs. So this is the second series in the entire order flow library that I'm doing free course on YouTube. So in this video, we're going to be going over footprint charts step by step, right? So all those numbers, all those colors in the candles, what do they represent, right? We're going to be going through that very in depth in this video. So take a notepad and pen, and I can't wait to get inside. So just like the last video, I'm going to start with a basic definition of what footprint charts are and why you need them. So if you've been watching a lot of my videos on the channel, what you will understand is that I use footprint charts every single time I execute. So I just want to make a few things clear before we even go into basic definitions. Footprint charts are not used as a strategy. Footprint charts are a tool to read the buyers and sellers, just like we went through in the last video. Footprint charts are a tool that you use to go through, right? They are a tool. They are not an indicator. They're not a bot. They're not an algo. You cannot program them into an algo. They are on software that you can use, and the footprint charts, again, are not an indicator. But the basic definition of footprint charts works something like this, right? So I want you to think of it this way. So the candlesticks show you the story, but footprint charts in real time tell you the story. So if you look at the top image here, and you look at the bottom image here, they are the same image, right? So this candle here, and then this big red candle. These three candles here represent these three. So this candle, this candle, this candle. So I just want to set the scoreboard here, if you like. So the market is nothing but a story of buyers and sellers. And so your ability to trade price comes down to your ability to read price, right? Reading price comes down to being in the now time frame. So these are things that I spoke about in my previous video on lesson 1, what is order flow. If you haven't watched that video and you're jumping to video 2, video 3, I recommend you clicking off this video unless you want to take it seriously. Being able to read footprint charts is the only skill you need in your trading. It's not the only skill, but when it comes to execution, it is the only skill. Because you can take any strategy or any so-called strategy. And if you're not executing with order flow, then I'm not sure what you're doing. Because execution simply comes down to exactly what I've said on the screen. It comes down to your ability to trade price, right? Your ability to trade price comes down to your ability to read price. So one thing I often say to people is that whenever you're trading Forex, there's one of two buttons you can press, right? The buy and sell button. When you trade futures, there's only one of two buttons you can press. What are they? When you trade crypto, stocks, like Meta or like Tesla, Meta and stuff, gold, Bitcoin, there's only two buttons you can press when it comes down to actually executing. And that is the buy and that is the sell. And so candles will only ever show you the story as they're happening or typically after they've happened. So one thing I often say to traders, and I've got this written down in my notes here, right, is I want you to think in this framework. So every single psychological issue you face can be fixed if you actually know how to read price instead of predicting it. Because if you're predicting price, you're trading with a huge amount of ego, which is not necessary in the markets, right? So I often say the market extracts two things, either money, you can either extract your money or you can either extract ego, right? So trading without order flow is very egotistical. Your ability to read the markets will only come down to how you read the buyers and sellers, right? Because the market is a story. And this is a theme that we're going to keep coming back to throughout the entire video. So before we go on to that, what you can hopefully see is that this wick over here, or this green candle, right? What we can see here is we can see a lot of red inside the green candle, right? Even here we have another green candle. We can see both blue and red, and you can see an intense color sort of gradient here, and you can see a less intense gradient here, right? So being able to read the story inside the candles is the only thing you need to become profitable. And there is nothing else, right? I don't want to say this is the holy grail because you can use order flow and still get it very wrong. But if you're using order flow, you're on the path to getting it very right. So what is order flow? So you should recognize this chart from the previous video, right? So order flow is not a strategy. It's not the holy grail. It's not a way of predicting the markets, and it's not an algo, a bot, an indicator. It's not the EMA. It's not like the EMAs or the VWAPs. I want you to throw all of that away. Take, for now, right? Take your existing strategy, right? And just add these candles to the chart. And so every single time you take a buy or a sell, you want to see what the buyers and sellers are doing inside of that candle. And that is the whole purpose of footprint charts, because footprint charts take these candles, right, and at the same time they return these candles. Now I just want to answer a few questions that people had. So it's not a new strategy. It's not the Holy Grail. It's not a way of predicting the markets. You're reading the markets in real time, in the now time frame, something we went through in the previous video. You're using all of these concepts to then take a trade, right? So some of the common questions I've had across all the socials is, does it work on Forex? Yes, it does. Does it work on futures? Absolutely. Does it work on crypto? Yes. Does it work on gold? Yes. Does it work on silver and even stocks like Tesla and Meta? Yes. It works on anything that involves buyers and sellers, or more specifically, supply and demand. So that's something we're going to go over in a later video. So there's just a couple of things. So there's common sort of concepts that you hear, right? One of them is a liquidity sweep, right? So again, I'm going back to one of my previous points. You cannot see liquidity through the candles, right? Candles exist everywhere, and by definition, there is going to be liquidity above every high and above every low. So by definition, there is liquidity everywhere. And so by definition, there would be a sweep of liquidity every 2 seconds. So liquidity sweeps are not a valid way to enter. These are some of the common concepts that you hear, right? So market structure shifts. Now, market structure shifts, I understand why people talk about market structure shifts, but as you can see here on the image, the one on your screen over here, right? Here we see basically a range between lots of aggressive selling and then lots of aggressive buying. So we're going to go over what this means and how to dissect a footprint chart. But just for the sake of this video where we are, right? Sweeps, market structure shifts, fair value gaps and inverse fair value gaps, support and resistance. We're going to come into this in a lot of detail later on, right? Trend lines, right? None of this is necessary if you're trying to read the story, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. Remember this slide over here. Your ability to trade comes down to your ability to read price, because the market is a story, and every story has main characters. And your ability to read the story, and more importantly, understand what the main characters are doing, will give you an edge, right? These things you see on the screen will not give you an edge, right? Just to add to this, we see EMAs, we see VWAPs, we see whatever, right? It's not important, right? You can take whatever system you have for now, providing it's valid. There's a good chance it's not, but if it's a valid system, take whatever valid system you have and simply put order flow to it. Right, this is what we're going to be going through. So I've made a whole separate slide on this to understand the market is a story. Every story has main characters. Your ability to read and understand that story comes down to your ability to read the main characters. So a deep dive into footprint charts. So what we can see here is I've taken a screenshot. This is an ES futures 5-minute candle, I think, right? So the candle is not important. The time frame is not important. The instrument or the stock is not important. So this, again, I'm going to reiterate, it works across Forex, futures, gold, Bitcoin, stocks, just about anything, right? It works. It even works on Forex too. So the thing is, when you're looking at a footprint chart, this looks like a lot of numbers, and it's important to have a basic understanding of what the numbers represent. So understanding what these numbers represent will allow you to then understand something called the delta. We're going to come on to what the delta means, right? We want to try and understand what these numbers mean. This is a footprint chart, right? So as you can see here, it's a bit small, but we can see the body of the candle. We can see this huge wick. And hopefully right now you can appreciate that you can have a green candle, right? By definition, this is a green candle. Candles don't tell you anything. So I'm going to keep referring back to what I said over here. Candles show you the story. Footprint charts tell you the story. So your ability to trade will only come down to your ability to read price, not see price, not predict price, not think you're reacting to it, not using common concepts, right? None of these things work, right? Because the market is a story and nothing else. And the good thing with this story is that it's not a complicated story, because there's only 2 main characters. Well, there's a few main characters, right? There's 4 in total. We're going to be discovering the first 2. So all you need to know with footprint charts is this. So I've seen videos online on YouTube, etc., where they really complicate what order flow is and what footprint charts are. But we discovered in the last video. If you haven't watched that, I highly recommend checking it out. But we understand order flow is simply an auction between buyers and sellers. These are the main characters, right? Order flow is then in the real time, it is showing you who is aggressive between the buyers and sellers. So the left number is the bid. So what you want to understand with the bid is that these are the aggressive sellers. So the way you want to interpret the word aggressive is think about it this way. Think about that they are hitting the market in real time. So let's put some context to this. So let's say if this is a 5-minute candle. If this is a 5-minute candle, this number here is 405. So the way you want to interpret this, very simply, is there are 405 aggressive sellers. So there are 405 active, real-time, in the now sellers that are trying to drive price down. So I want you to almost visualize it as a tug of war, right? The story can be seen as a tug of war or an auction between buyers and sellers for this particular price and time. So let's say this is a 1-minute candle, just for argument's sake. S&P 500 futures, this is a 1-minute candle. Now, if you're looking at this, 405, that simply represents the aggressive seller. So it tells you at that price. So let's say this is ES at 6,700. Let's just say this is 6,700 of ES. Time of recording, I think we're pretty close to 6,700. 6,700 on ES, right? At this time, let's say 10 a.m. Eastern. So 10 a.m. Eastern, there were 105 sellers at this price. Now, that is the left number. The left number is the aggressive sell orders. Now, the right number is the ask, and you probably guessed what the ask represents. They are the aggressive buyers or the aggressive buy orders. So all you want to understand with footprint charts, and again, I get this question a lot. All you want to understand with footprint charts is it's the total number of contracts, or it's the total number of sellers and buyers trading at that price for that particular stock at that time. These are the aggressive participants. They are hitting the bid and they're hitting the ask in real time. This is the now time frame. So hopefully you can appreciate by now, there's no other tool, indicator, strategy, concept, EMA signal or VWAP bounce, whatever, that gives you the level of indication, especially on those lower time frames, that order flow gives you. So again, I'm gonna reiterate what I said. So the market is a story, nothing else. These are the main characters. So the analogy I want you to use once again, before we go to the charts, is you want to think about this, right? The market is a story between buyers and sellers, and your success will simply come down to reading those buyers and sellers. So before we go to the next topic, which is the delta, I'm just going to get my screen up over here. So this is now NASDAQ on the 1-minute time frame. Let me just make that bigger. This is the ATAS platform. So in all of my videos, I will tell you what platform I'm using. I'm using the ATAS platform. And so the ATAS platform, again, is, in my opinion, the best. I mean, you can use ATAS, you can use Sierra charts, you can use Motive Wave, you can use, I think TradingView has an option as well. You can use, I think there's deep charts now. There's a lot of different charts you can use. However, the fundamental principles you want to understand is that they all represent the same thing. Another thing I want to dissect as well. If you are day trading, and you're on those lower time frames, nothing will give you indication, or nothing will give you the level of, accuracy you're looking for than footprint charts. So you don't want to focus too much on things like heat maps, and I see a lot of traders using heat maps and lots of other order flow tools. You want to stick to footprint charts, because footprint charts give you the entire data that you need, right? There is nothing on footprint charts that you need that's not there, right? Everything you need is there. So this is a candlestick chart. Now, when I just kind of zoom in, what you can start to see is the numbers. You don't need to read all the numbers, because we are going to be focusing on specifics of footprint charts. Now, for the sake of this video, if we go back to the PowerPoint presentation, for the sake of this video, you do not need to know exactly where to use footprint charts or the system behind it, right? If you have a system that works and it's a valid system, then feel free to kind of just, use the footprint charts along with whatever system you're using. But if you don't, or if you don't understand footprint charts, we're going to go through it. So the delta trumps everything. So if you're using any of these concepts over here, right? So I'm just going to go back. So a sweep of liquidity, if you're using liquidity, I want you to stop. If you're using any kind of structure, I want you to stop. If you're using fair value gaps alone without any confirmation from footprint charts, I want you to stop. If you're trading support and resistance, I'm gonna go over support and resistance later on in this video. If you're trading support and resistance, I want you to stop. And if you're trading trend lines, I want you to stop, right? Because none of that means anything without this chart, but more importantly, without this chart here. So the delta trumps everything. So we've understood the left number is the bid, the sellers, the aggressive sellers. The right number is the ask, the aggressive buyers. Now, what you will see with a footprint chart, a footprint chart will give you different gradients of colors. So within the candle, you will see different shades. So the way that I've set up my A-test platform or my footprint charts is that you will see blue and red. So hopefully it should be pretty self-explanatory what each kind of gradient color represents. So let's start with the left-hand side. Blue delta. This is more aggressive buyers. So if we just go back to what that means, let's go back to our chart over here. So when you see blue delta, you can see that over here, right? So this number here, I appreciate it's small, but this number here, 559 for 405. So the ask, the left number, the aggressive buyers is bigger than the aggressive sellers. And that's why this row is shaded in blue, because blue represents more aggressive buyers and sellers. That is what the footprint chart is representing. So the footprint charts actually tell you what's going on in real time, in the now, between buy and sell orders. There is no other tool that you need to be using that gives you the information you need that the delta will give you. Right? I'll repeat that again. There is no tool that you should be using to take executions other than footprint charts, and more specifically the delta. Now, two things with delta. You do not use delta as your strategy. Right, so there's two fatal mistakes that traders make with order flow. They use footprint charts to base off their entire strategy, and they use delta to buy and sell everywhere. That is incorrect. The second thing is using footprint charts without a system. So if you don't have a system, footprint charts are not going to help you. So if you don't have a mechanical way to find levels, to look at premium and discount, to understand where you are in the week, the delta will not help you. The delta is simply there for traders who understand how to build systems behind their processes to trade the markets, right? Once you've got the delta, you understand that there's two types of delta. Red delta, again, is the opposite. So there are more aggressive sellers, and that's what's going on. So if we go back to our chart over here, let me give you another example. So if we just take a look up here at the top, it says 515 for 379, right? 515 is the bid. 379 is the ask. And so what that means, or how we need to interpret that, is that there are more aggressive sell orders. Okay, so we have blue delta, which is more aggressive buy orders, and we have red delta, which is more aggressive sell orders. And this is the thing I want to finish off on, and this is the hard sort of lesson. So in trading, everything comes down to support and resistance, or the words I like to use is supply and demand, right? So if you look at any one of my charts here, for example, if I just bring up one of the charts over here, what you'll see here, what I draw on NQ, for example, even if I go to ES, right? If I go to ES, for example, and we're going to be going over lots of chart examples later on in the video. So if we go to ES, the way that my chart typically looks like is it looks like this, right? What you see here is a bunch of levels, right? So I even have them labeled out for people to see, right? So we have 5, 4, so let me do that again. So the way the markets work is they move from level to level. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And obviously we have a 4-hour zone here. So look, your order flow and your understanding of order flow is only as good as the levels that you have. I'm going to repeat that. Using order flow, or specifically using the footprint charts, is only as good as the levels you have. And the levels you come from needs to come from a valid system. So I'm not going to go over that in this video. I've made lots of videos on that on the channel. Feel free to check it out. But what you're going to see, because I often get questioned about this, so these are support and resistance areas. So I'll give you an example. This price action here left an imbalance, right? So price tapped in on Friday, the 6th of March, 2026, time of recording. This was an area of demand or a support right here. Price went up. Now, what is important to understand, just for the sake of this video here, is the market will revisit this level, right? The market revisits this level, and it's now acting as supply or resistance. Now, your job isn't to, this is the thing that drives me nuts, right? Because I've seen so many traders do this, right? Support and resistance, right? Let's finish on this topic because I think it's a very important topic. So you don't find these lines. I've said that twice. You don't find these lines. You don't draw these lines. You don't spot these lines. You don't try and find multiple tabs. You don't eyeball what looks good. You don't use ICT concepts to find the zones. You don't wait for large, impulsive, momentum, big, nice candles. I've heard all of it throughout my years. You don't use anything else apart from footprint charts, because footprint charts tell you who's in control between buyers and sellers. And if sellers are in control, it's a resistance. If buyers are in control, it's a support. That's it. That's all you need to do. So you don't need to draw lines like Picasso. You don't need to find the lines. You're not looking for a needle in a haystack. You don't need to find multiple tabs. You don't need to eyeball the zones. You definitely don't want to eyeball the zones, because you're basically saying you can read buyers and sellers in $1 trillion market, and you can't with your eyes. You can't do that. Fight me. You can't do that. You don't need to wait for large moves, impulsive moves, momentum candles, break candles, nice candles, long candles, hammer candles, shooting star candles, I already said that. Inverse hammers. You don't need to wait for any of that. All you do is you find a zone, you wait for price to come in the zone, and you look for buyers and sellers in that zone, right? And if you're stuck on that, this is what buyers and sellers actually look like. So what I'm going to do is, this concludes the footprint chart training. Hopefully you have a rough understanding of how footprint charts work. In the next few videos, I'm going to be breaking down different types of order flow tools, because we haven't covered how to use order flow with things like delta, volume, etc., etc. I'm going to be going over that in future videos, and then we're going to use this stuff on the charts to go over supply and demand, right? So this is basically where we're heading. We are heading towards support and resistance, or supply and demand, right? So we're going to understand how to find these zones using these tools here. But I want to kind of finish you on this note here, right? You don't find the lines, you don't draw the lines, you don't wait for tabs, you definitely don't eyeball, you don't use ICT concepts, you don't wait for large, impulsive, nice, big, green, red, hammer, engulfing. You don't wait for any of those candles, right? You don't name candles. Candles don't have names, right? Candles are candles. They don't have names. And the last thing you do is you don't use anything else other than buyers and sellers to take a buy or sell. That is it, right? So if you found this video useful, feel free to come to my channel, and we're gonna go through order flow in a lot of detail in the next few weeks and months ahead.